Welcome to Everything Comes Together. My name is Sreenag and I'm an architectural photographer based in Chennai, India. My guest today is DP Prashant of Facilini Design Lab. On Everything Comes Together, I'll be speaking with people in the broader photography, architecture and design communities. Rather than only talking about their work, we will be talking about them, their personal journey, the challenges they overcame, and the most pivotal incidents in their lives that made them who they are today. So now, let's get to it. To a layperson, the most overlooked and underappreciated building material is concrete. To someone like me, concrete is one of the most brilliant materials, purely down to how astonishingly customizable it is. And as a photographer, this flexibility helps architects and designers create beautiful and functional elements that I enjoy shooting. This was the foundation of my relationship with my next guest, DP Prashant of Facilini Design Lab. Every time I speak with him, I walk away with something interesting. On this interview, he talks about the unconnected career path he was on earlier, the importance of apprenticeship, and the joy of working with amazing architects.
Facilini Design Lab is the architectural product division of my company. So what we do is we create customized architectural products. So they are specific to a particular project. So it's all products which are made from very high-end, specially engineered concretes. And so, for example, if you have a facade, right? So every building is different. Every building has got a different fixing requirement. Every building has got a different size requirement. And of course, every architect wants a project to be unique, right? So you want to be able to design every element of a facade or sometimes even a flooring. So you want a particular pattern or a particular type of aggregate on your floor.
Yes.
So that can be done. And we also do other stuff. I mean, we also do like specific like furniture and planter boxes and things like that.
Sure.
Which are all made to order. So, I mean, if I was to kind of boil it down, I guess with Eurocon tiles or with any of the other tile products that we have, we are a product company,
right,
in the sense that we have like a brochure and you're ordering products from a brochure. Whereas with Facilini Design Lab, there is no brochure.
Okay.
I discuss with you what I've done for what I have done, what I can do, and then you and I kind of figure out the product together, right? I mean, we try and understand what exactly you want and how we can make it for you, and actually we kind of flesh the product out together. That's
sure.
That's a main difference. So I mean, it's very funny because a lot of times you will see people saying, send your brochure over. I mean, the answer is there is no brochure. What I can do, what I can do is come and talk to you about what I have done and what I can do, and then we'll figure out some exciting thing that we can create together. That's the whole fun.
And you are part of the Eurocon Group, right?
That's right.
And that's a family business.
That's right. So I think in the 80s, my father and uncle started Eurocon Tiles. They were sort of pioneers at that time in making, cement concrete tiles of that nature. And I think over 30 years, they've got a range of more than 100 different designs and colors and textures and applications and things like that. And it's a huge, exciting range, but it is a product range. So that product range actually has a brochure. So you can actually look at the brochure and say, I want that product, and we'll supply it to you. This division is a little different.
Right. So they must have actually spent a fair amount of time working with architects.
Yes, they worked extensively with architects, and they have very nice, enduring relationships with many of them even today. So they work very closely. They try to kind of understand what architects want, what they look for. from the perspective of understanding the architect and therefore designing a product which would be popular with a large number of architects.
Okay. So now that we just have an idea of what it is you do and what the company does, let's just start right at the beginning. Not too many people are really, not too many people really know what concrete is capable of. And personally, I feel concrete is one of the most overlooked architectural elements. Would you agree to that?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I honestly think that concrete is one of the most exciting materials that you can play with. It is a blank canvas. You can do so much with it. You can engineer it. You can, if you understand the way the chemistry works, you can basically put in different properties into your concrete, right? So you can make it harder, you can make it thinner, you can make it longer, you can make it denser, you can make it lighter, you can change the color. It is literally the most designable thing at a construction site. And the beauty of the product is, it's been around for thousands of years. I mean, literally thousands of years. And as humankind itself has progressed, the product itself has evolved. And so, if you look at just the way concrete has been used over the centuries, it kind of mirrors the way, human life itself has progressed. And that's the beauty of the material. It is absolutely timeless. And I am absolutely in love with it. We can talk for a whole hour about concrete.
I think we have talked for far more than just a whole hour about concrete.
Yeah.
But where did this love for concrete come in? Did it come in at an early age?
No, not really. I think the love for concrete actually came when I started working with concrete. There was always a sort of urge to do something creative, to create something of my own. And given that this is the background of the business as it existed then, I found working with concrete, creating with concrete, very, very satisfying. I found it a lot of fun, and I found it really enjoyable. And I found that you could do a lot of things with it. And so that's where I really got into it. Aesthetically, though, I've always appreciated what concrete could look like, the different forms that it took. I mean, when I was a kid, I would see things that my father and uncle were doing, and I found them really interesting and really fascinating. But honestly, I really got kind of pulled in or got sucked in when I started working with my own hands, and I found that the possibilities are absolutely endless.
So you've always been making things from the time you were a kid, or even through college.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed that. It's great fun to. It's a, what do you say? There's a creative rush where when you actually create something that did not exist before, and now because of you it exists, right? That's a very arrogant sort of rush. It is arrogance. It is pure arrogance.
Yeah.
But it is an absolute rush that you thought of something in your mind, and you thought about giving it flesh, giving it form, and it now exists because of you. That is a very, very satisfying feeling.
I can totally relate to that. So
and it has nothing to do with whether you are sort of recognized for it or not. It is just the thrill when you actually see it. And in the case of concrete, it's very dramatic, right? Because unlike a sculptor or a painter, where you can actually sort of see it take form over time, right? Like you can do a time lapse for a sculpture and it would look really cool, right? if you were to do time lapse for concrete, it's ridiculously boring because you basically got a mold, right? And then for 24 hours there is absolutely no action, and then there is one giant reveal when you de-shutter it or when you take off the mold, right? So the reveal is very dramatic.
Yeah.
And so it's you don't if you've made a mistake, you won't realize it until it's too late.
That sounds like photography with film. You never know.
Yes.
You shoot what you need to when you're shooting, and then you have to wait sometimes a day or a couple of days at least to see the results.
Yeah. No, it's also like baking actually. I mean, you won't know if you made a mistake until you eat the bread and it tastes like cardboard. It's exactly like that. You will know only when it's too late. And that's the fun. I mean, that's the thrill as well.
Yeah.
And that's and that's what leads you to kind of think very carefully about what you're doing and kind of sweat over every little detail. I mean, that's all part of the fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And so did you study anything that helped you with concrete? Did you do what did you study in college?
So I did my bachelor's degree is in mechanical engineering. So I mean the engineering degree helps definitely. Having said that, I was not a civil engineer, but there were, I think, some basic fundamentals that thankfully in my case I was taught by those subjects at least were handled by reasonably good profs. So those fundamentals kind of stay with you, and it helps. But I mean, obviously, if I had done civil engineering or something, it may have been more directly sort of applicable. But even in my mechanical engineering program, the subjects that I found interesting were stuff to do with strength of materials, with statics, and also material science itself. Even though at the time I found material science a little dry, and I absolutely love it now. I mean, it's a subject that really interests me.
And it's directly applicable to your work.
It is, except that I did not. It kind of went into cold storage. So I learned all of this, and then I did an MBA, and so all of this kind of went into cold storage. Thankfully, it did not evaporate. But yeah, it was it was sitting in cold storage somewhere, and then after I did my MBA, and then I worked at a corporate job for a while, and then when I came back to this, I was able to kind of at least pick up from memory at least, and also kind of jog it by reading a little and doing a little bit of a recap. I was able to kind of get it to help.
Yeah. And speaking about the corporate job, that was at ITC, doing something completely unrelated to what you're doing today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's not, I know this is called, the series is called, How It All Comes Together. And that kind of suggests that there is some sort of grand plan. Except that in my case, I mean, honestly, at that stage in life, I did not have this plan or vision of doing what I'm doing right now. At that stage, I was not sure what I wanted to do. I enjoyed the job in ITC. It was very challenging. It was very new, and it was very exciting. I was selling cigarettes in Gujarat, so it was really interesting. It took me all over the state. It took me to places I would otherwise never have been to. It brought me in contact with people I would otherwise never have met.
But that's a great deal of exposure to have too.
It is an amazing exposure to have. I mean, if I would honestly say that it's a great experience for anyone, honestly, irrespective of what you end up doing in life. When you work where you come across people like that, you literally. I've literally gone on a cycle, actually carrying cigarettes at the back, with bags on either side, selling cigarettes. I mean, that's part of your training. So I mean, the first week when you join when you land up at your branch, the first week you have to live the life of a salesman to understand what he goes through. And I think that's brilliant, because there are lots of little things that no one ever forgets that stint. No one who's ever worked in ITC will forget that stint. So so you come across people who are having small shops, small businesses, and you see what they go through. It's a lovely experience.
And if you spent a lot of time in Gujarat, you must have spent a lot of time in Ahmedabad with some of the most wonderful architecture in the country.
Yeah. So our office was just on the banks of the Sabarmati. So I've been to that beautiful Sabarmati ashram and the museum there, which is, I think, by Charles Correa.
Oh wow! Okay.
And the second year I was there, I was staying actually near IIM. I mean, not too far away from the IIM building. And honestly, Ahmedabad is full of beautiful, beautiful buildings. And you have buildings across eras. I mean, you have buildings from the Mughal era. You have some buildings even before the Mughal era. And then you've got some colonial buildings, and then you've got some beautiful Art Deco buildings, and then you've got some wonderful modern buildings as well. So really, I mean, it's a wonderful place to just roam around and stare at buildings. It's lovely. I absolutely enjoyed it.
And even probably at that time, since you weren't yet on the track bringing you to work with architects, seeing these buildings must have... did that give you some sort of insight into what they might...
I mean, no. Honestly, at that stage, I was not even thinking about architects. It is just something as basic as when you see something that appeals to you and you just gawk at it. You're not necessarily thinking at that stage about the process, about how they did it, how they finished it, or what they thought when they designed it. All you're thinking of is, oh my God, that looks amazing. I want to keep staring at it. That's honestly all you're thinking.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, now if I was to go back, I would probably think and,
look at it differently.
Look at all those details, which is a different kind of enjoyment. But honestly, any well-designed building takes your breath away for a second. There is a moment of wonder. And actually, I mean, it's a bit like the Taj, right? Like I've been to see it 3 times, and I mean, the first time was obviously you're staggered by the beauty of the building, but the second time you know exactly what you are going to see, and yet when you see it, there is still that moment of awe. There is that moment of absolute wonder, and that never goes away with a beautiful building.
Yeah, totally.
Doesn't matter how many times you see it, you will always, there's always that wow moment when you see it, when even if it's for the 4th or 5th or the 10th time.
So how long were you at ITC? And
I was in ITC for a little bit more than about 2.5 years. I was with ITC. I had also done an internship with them over the summer, so they gave me a job based on my internship. So, I mean, so I was with them for 2.5 years. 2 years in Ahmedabad and a few months in Bangalore.
So, what made you want to leave and move on from this job? I mean, it sounds like you were having a good time.
Well, so I mean, like I told you, there was always this urge to do something creative, and not to suggest that there was anything. I mean, it's a great company to work for, and it's a great company to work for even today. But it is just that I had this urge to create products of my own, to create something of my own, and so I left.
And you came back to join
I
Eurocon.
came back to join. I came back to join Eurocon, the family business, and for a while, I was just trying to understand what they were doing, how they're doing, wanting to understand the material. And then once you kind of understand the material, you understand what the limitations of the material are. And then you see, which are the boundaries you can push and which are the levers that you can play with. How can you do more with the material? I think that's kind of where this whole thing started.
Right. And when did you actually start Facilini Design Lab?
The idea for this actually came, I think, a year or 2 years after I joined. So sometime around 2009 or 2010 was when the idea started forming that, we need to be doing more with the material. And then one of the sort of turning points was when we did some work with a Sri Lankan firm called MICD. They were renovating a hotel and they wanted a very specific kind of tile. So that was the first time that we sort of made a tile outside of our catalog. We actually custom made a tile. And spending time with those architects and kind of understanding the way they saw concrete and also understanding the possibilities that can be unlocked once you start customizing concrete for a designer was quite interesting. And so from then on, we started becoming a lot more open and a lot more interested in customizing the material. And if you really want to customize, you kind of have to work on the material. So you have to innovate with the basic material. You have to innovate with the chemistry. You have to innovate with the enhancements that you do, and that requires know-how. But we realized that this was a destination worth efforting for, and so we started looking at how we could enhance what we were doing and enhance our capabilities.
So once you started Facilini, what was the first new innovations that you started to develop?
So the thing is, concrete is great for any kind of compressive loads. It's not particularly good for flexural loads. So that is the first sort of limitation that you have to overcome. So you have to figure out how to make this material less brittle. You have to figure out how to make this material more, give it better sort of flexural strength. And obviously, you can't look at conventional steel for a whole bunch of reasons. But I mean, essentially, if you go with a steel reinforcement, you need to increase the thickness of your concrete, and then your panel itself becomes very heavy. And so the trick is to kind of look at innovative ways of reinforcing your concrete and look at ways in which you can make the concrete stronger, lighter, thinner, kind of have your cake and eat it too, kind of thing. So that was the first thing we looked at. How do we make the panels bigger? Because that's basically what a lot of architects look for. They look for size. They look for a large panel for a facade. So yeah, and that was one of the first things we started working on.
And did you need to bring in outside help, or did you need to go somewhere else to start developing new techniques?
Yeah, so there is a lot of there's a lot of research that you do obviously on your own. A lot of this stuff is there online, but I think I got a lot of practical help in the US. Where I'd gone for the I've been attending the World of Concrete, which happens in the US. It's like this worldwide concrete expo. Happens every year. I make sure I go there at least once in 2 years. So there you come across lots of interesting people. You come across lots of interesting products as well. You literally get the best in engineering and material science from across the world. And you also, when you kind of talking to people there, you get ideas, and you try and understand what they're doing. And the nice thing is, you're meeting people who are casting concrete in the US. You're not direct competition to them, they're not direct competition to you. So it's actually very nice. I'm sure you would have experienced something similar when you talk to other photographers. It's actually lovely to talk about what you do to other people who do it.
Yes, absolutely.
You learn a lot in the process, and they may learn something from your experiences as well. And you invariably learn from the mistakes, right? So it just becomes easier when you're learning from other people's mistakes rather than your own.
That's true.
So I met a bunch of people there who I learned a lot from. In fact, I spent some time with one of them in North Carolina. I spent a lot of time at his studio. I mean, not his studio, at his workshop.
Oh, nice.
Where we were doing different types of concrete casting together, different types of mixes. And I was trying to understand what he was doing. He was trying to understand what I was doing. And many of these relationships have sustained even today. So even today, I bounce ideas off of all of these people that I met there. I discuss, I exchange ideas. I sometimes, throw a suggestion at them just to see, what their reaction is, or, if there's a problem. Because when you're designing, right, there is like one part of you that always has to think of what can be, and there is another part of you that always has to think of what can go wrong.
Absolutely, right? Yeah.
And so the problem is that when you're only thinking of what can be, it's very difficult to kind of step back and think of what can go wrong. And so this is where, when you kind of have a good relationship and you're discussing an idea conceptually with someone, it helps if they say, yeah, you should, yes, you can do this, but you should look out for this, and this.
Explaining the pitfalls.
Yes, you can. Exactly. So and that help is not only from the US. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of people in India also who have guided me tremendously. Architects, engineers who, when they're involved in a discussion with you, irrespective of the topic of the discussion, you are enriched by the discussion itself, by the quality of the discussion, by the ideas that are being discussed. It helps you think of what you're doing very differently.
Yeah.
So
this must have helped you innovate with new concrete related ideas back home.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you look. So there is a bunch of stuff that works there, which is good for that country. It has to be adapted to what we do here. Something even as basic as temperature, it makes such a big difference to concrete.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I mean, everything has to be kind of modified based on the materials you get here, based on the cement you get here, based on the aggregates you get here, based on the chemicals that you get here. Because when you're talking about doing something at scale, you have to make sure that you got a continuous availability of all these things. So if you don't have continuous availability of something, you have to adapt your product, you have to adapt your process. And that itself is an interesting process, and that is the part of my job that I have absolutely loved. It is constantly iterating, constantly improving, and enhancing. And if you see, there is we try and make sure that every project we do is better in some way than what we did before. So we try and make sure that we keep evolving and keep getting better at what we do.
So you've talked a lot about how flexible and how customizable concrete can be in its application. This
Right.
must mean that you must be doing a lot of R&D to make sure that you keep improving.
Oh, absolutely.
So how does the R&D process work for you?
So there are two types of R&D. One is a very project specific R&D. So for example, if I've discussed with an architect and he wants me to do something, and most often because the work is customized, you find that each requirement is different from the previous one, right? So there will be some very specific R&D that I need to do to make sure that what he's asking for is feasible, and also what exactly it involves from a commercial point of view to do what he is asking for, right? Because it is difficult to quote for something that you have never done before, and so you need to do some sort of trials and very project specific R&D. Then there is the other kind of R&D where it is like for preference. So for example, when an architect says he wants gray, right? Now gray means many different things to many different architects. So there is a level of very basic R&D where you're trying to create different shades for him, create a color palette for him. I mean, all of that is R&D in a sense. But beyond a specific project, where there is no architect involved, where you are just thinking in your own head saying, it would be interesting if we could do this, or it would be interesting if we could do that, or what happens if I substitute A with B or C with D, will I be able to do this? There is that kind of R&D, which also happens, I think, I would say that happens all the time actually. We're always looking at new stuff, reading new stuff, seeing what we can do with it.
So Eurocon started off as a purely product-based company, you mentioned, right? So now,
Correct.
What's the range like? How much have you expanded? You can just touch on that briefly.
Sure. So the thing with Eurocon was that when they started, I think the excitement at that time was that you had a material that you could cast, right? And so my father and uncle, they explored that to the maximum, in the sense they looked at making tiles of different shapes. The tiles didn't have to be squares and rectangles. They looked at different colors, they looked at different textures, they looked at different applications for tiles. So they had floor tiles, they had wall tiles, they had a tile for the step with the nosing, they actually had a tile for skirting as well. And so you had floor, you had wall, you had step tiles in Eurocon. With Facilini, actually, we've done lots of other stuff. We've said that, rather than just tiles, we've looked at facades, so large panels for, the elevation of a building. We've looked at perforated screens. Then we've also created sort of building blocks that you can just stack up to create a wall or to create a screen as well. We've also created some very, very specific, specialized, high-end tiling products with new age concrete as well. We've done planter boxes. We've done furniture. I mean,
that's the one that excites me the most. The furniture.
So it's possible to do all kinds of things with it, and we're kind of even as we speak right now, we're thinking about creating a kind of integrated tread and riser kind of step slab right now. We've actually created balcony walls itself. So we're not cladding onto anything. We're actually creating the wall itself with our material. We've done a project where we've created tread slabs. I mean, not the tile for the tread, but the tread slabs itself for a staircase, for a very, very light, slim staircase. And then we've done pergolas. Like I said, we've done all of this.
So that's a huge transformation of services and products.
It is, but I don't want to give you the impression that I sat with a pen and paper and listed out all these things. That's not at all how it happened. You go to a creative architect and say that this is the material I have, and he himself will say, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? And then you do your sort of R&D and get back to them and say, yeah, we can. So many of these applications were driven by ideas that architects had, ideas that designers had.
Right. So it grew organically.
Absolutely. The process is 100% organic. It is not like I sat down and said, I can do all of this. That's absolutely not. What I sat down and did was, I want my material to be able to do A, B, C, D, E. And then you go to the architect and say, I've got a material that can do A, B, C, D, E. And then he will start thinking. And then you feed off of that and you develop expertise that way.
So let's just change tracks a little bit. So far, the other people we have spoken to, they've all started their own businesses, and that comes with its own host of challenges. But you have worked elsewhere and come back to the family business, and as part of a family business, you have expanded the company with probably your father and your uncles on board. Expanded from being purely a product-based company to a product and a service-based company, where you can customize every piece and every project, right? What were the challenges you faced, either expanding the family business, and what were the challenges you faced getting people to understand what concrete can actually do?
I wouldn't say it's a challenge. I would say that myself included, we all had to start looking at this business a little differently, right? From the way we do things. I mean, our processes, right? The way in which you manufacture a floor tile would be very different from the way in which you manufacture a large facade panel. So, I mean, beyond your basic process has to change, and your culture has to change. Your skills have to evolve. If you're making a large facade panel, you need to have a very, very different bunch of skills. And so we had to spend quite a bit of time developing those skills, evolving our processes, and there is no you can't just kind of get this overnight. You have to kind of keep working at it to evolve it. And so over time, we kind of evolved. We designed our own fixtures. We designed our own manufacturing setup to suit what it is that we are now kind of gearing up to do. So there is that whole level of internal adjustment. Thankfully, I mean, in terms of what concrete can do, there are architects who love using the material, and thankfully we've been very, very fortunate to work with architects who have enjoyed using the material, and who also have pushed us to improve and pushed us to get better. The challenge comes very often where a client maybe doesn't understand the material. There are some who believe that concrete is purely like this civil engineering structural material. Clients are sometimes concerned about the perception of concrete. The idea is that the idea is that it is quote unquote not it is not perceived to be posh. I guess some clients believe that you need to have marble and you need to stuff like that, because what will people think? Log kya sochenge types, which so I honestly, architects really get the material. They understand what makes concrete amazing and awesome. Some clients get it. Some clients are absolutely a pleasure to work with. Some clients you have to kind of convince them, and that's where the convincing happens. Where you have to explain to them what it could look like. You have to explain to them what is possible with the material. Because the minute you say concrete to many clients, they think of this dull, grey, boring thing, which it is not. It is, I said, it's the most exciting thing at a construction site. Yeah.
So now that we have talked about how things were when you started off, how you came back to the business, and organically with the help of architects who were happy to experiment and try new things. You have expanded what Facilini can do. Where do you see Facilini going? Where do you see the use of concrete going in architecture in the next few years at least?
I think it has a long way to go, even in the areas that we're already operating in. If you look at, say a facade or something, I mean, really, if you were to compare the number of sites where they have, say, glass or stone or aluminum compared to concrete, I mean, concrete is like a minuscule minority. Now, I mean, every material has its pluses and minuses, but I honestly think that awareness is the biggest limiting factor here. So, the minute but I think thankfully that is changing. I mean, we have more and more clients now who actually want concrete, who like concrete because they're seeing more buildings. So it is a self-feeding cycle. More people see interesting buildings with concrete, and awareness about the material also increases, and they become more receptive and they become more positively inclined to the material. So I definitely see this as a growing kind of or a material which has got huge scope to grow, even in the applications where we are already in. Now, apart from that, there are always products which we are trying to create for the floor and for stuff like that as flooring alternatives, because again, it's a beautiful material. You can make it very hard, very durable, and it's repolishable. So we think that it's got great potential there as well. So I mean, really, honestly, the sky is the limit because we are nowhere right now. I mean, we are scratching the surface in terms of penetration of this material. And the funny thing is, if you go back 100 years, we used concrete everywhere in an Indian house, right? I mean, you would have red oxide floors, you would have, cement flooring, you would have in situ concrete. So we've used cement and concrete a lot traditionally in our houses.
Yeah, I'm sitting on red oxide floor right now as we're talking.
Sure.
So
I'm sure, and it's a lovely material. And like I said, over time it evolves. As we have evolved, the material has also evolved. But honestly, I think the scope for using it more and awareness is tremendous.
I think that's really exciting. If what we have seen so far has excited me,
Right.
I can't even imagine what it must be like when everyone really uses concrete to close to its fullest possibilities.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Prashant, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah,
I
lovely.
think I've known you for some time, but I think even I've learned something new from you today, from the way, from how you brought the business together and how you basically were able to evolve your products and services. And I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you so much. Those are very kind words, and thank you so much for having me on your show. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Prashant.
Okay, thank you.
To watch this and other episodes of the show, please subscribe to Sreenag Pictures on YouTube, or you can listen to the audio podcast by subscribing to Everything Comes Together on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or on the podcast app of your choice. The music for the show was composed by Aashray Harishankar from Escapist Music. Post-production by Thiruvikraman Srinivasaraghavan of SNS Arts Development Consultancy, and production assistance by Abdul Jeelani. You can reach me on Instagram @Sreenag or from my website www.sreenagpictures.com. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another fascinating guests who work in photography, architecture or design. Until we meet again, it's goodbye from Mylapore.